thank you for taking the time to do this, Ace. As I say, I think this is a really important issue, and not something I want to bumble my way through. So,
all right, definition of mental health, illness, and wellness. There is a difference. Mental health includes emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also determines how we handle stress related to others, and make choices. So it all sort of, our mental health is our ground base, is our point zero. And mental illness, well, mental illness are health conditions involved in emotion, thinking, or behaviors, or combination of these. Mental illnesses are associated with distress or problems functioning in social, work, or family activities. So, we're not feeling so well. Mental illness is something that we live with. It's not something that defines us. We can all struggle. Mental illness is something that's sort of it feels like it's unexplainable, that has a negative impact on the choices that we make that affect our lives. Where mental wellness is the opposite, is where we're in a good state of mind, where we are able to cope with everyday stresses more manageably. And that's the first foremost. So if you're going to be talking about mental, please don't mix up these three. There's a big difference in all of this. You might want to ask a question, how is your mental health today? And that way they could tell you where they are at, as far as feeling well, or maybe they're feeling ill. And it's okay either way. What is depression? Well, depression is a mood disorder that causes a person feeling a persistent feeling of sadness or loss of interest, also called major depression disorder or clinical depression. It affects how we think, feel, and behave, and leads to various emotion and physical problems. If I stutter, I'm dyslexic, so sometimes I stumble a little bit. Some of the symptoms, feeling sad, depressed, loss of interest, and things that you normally feel happy about. Maybe it's playing your instrument, change of appetite, trouble sleeping, loss of energy, loss of purpose. And that seems to be a loss of purpose. That is a big one I've been coming across, especially with COVID. Music in the music industry is often our identity. And right now, since we're not doing it, people don't know where they belong. Sometimes we're feeling worthless or guilty. We have a hard time making decisions, and sometimes thoughts of suicide and death. What are causes of depression? Physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. That is a big one. Sometimes medications, conflict, death or loss, genetics, major events. COVID, anybody? Yes. Serious illnesses, negative word use, negative self-talk. That is such a huge thing. We are always listening to ourselves. And if you say things like, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, you listen. And sometimes people will call you out on it and you go, oh, I'm joking. Nah, I think there's more to it than that. So positive self-talk, everybody, please. I can't stress the importance of that. Everyone looks over that so much.
Can I jump in on that for a second?
Please do.
Somebody was telling me, think about your passwords for things and change your passwords to be like, instead of XYF15 PP, whatever, change your passwords to like, you're awesome. You can do it, and like however many times a day you're doing this simple thing and your brain is like, yeah, okay. I don't know.
So what is anxiety? A feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an certain outcome. For us, it's, what we got a show coming up. We got an event coming up. We have a webinar coming up. You're not confident in what you're going to say. And no matter how much time you put into it, sometimes you're always going to have a little bit of doubt. So, fears of situation in which you may be judged. This is a prime time, prime example. Being on stage is a prime example. Showing demos and, being confident in your music writing. Those are all, situations where we put ourselves out there to be judged. And that affects us. So once again, that's part of the stresses of the music industry. For a lot of artists, music is a therapeutic process that helps us get those thoughts and feelings out. And initially, sometimes those are private thoughts. And now we amplify those out to the world. It takes a lot of balls to do that, to put yourself on a pedestal for people to have any sort of judgment on you, positive or negative. And sometimes when it comes to musicians, or often I see, people will get a good compliment. Hey, that was a good show. And often our musician's response is, well, it wasn't that good. my voice was a little pitchy. My kick pedal kept screwing up. My monitor sucked. Blah blah. Hey, just shut up and say thank you.
But if we're anxious, sorry, here I am jumping in again.
Yeah.
If I'm anxious, there's the audience's opinion. Why on earth do we put ourselves in situations where it's like, oh, hold on a second, here's a review in the New York Times that says I'm shit or awesome, equally ridiculous. Why do we do this?
Well, Martin, I'm glad you asked, but I'm not going to answer that yet because that's coming up later on in the slides.
Okay,
because you're right. Why do we do that? So, what is addiction? And this kind of goes into what you're just saying. The inability to stop a behavior or substance, no matter how harmful the behavior results become. In recent years, research has shown that addiction is often a coping strategy to relieve the pain of trauma or PTSD. And then, what is a stimulant? A substance or physical activity that encourages the production of dopamine. I can't even pronounce that word. Serotonin and serotonin in the brain. So what does playing music do? Right? So, but before we get back into that, what is stigma? Stigma is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular criticism, quality, or person. Stigma is an act or speech that takes away from one's character or reputation. Stigma issues, mental illness, addiction, appearance, color of skin, sexuality, gender, or religion. Those are all things that are stigmatized. Just because someone isn't thinking the same way you are, sometimes people hate on you, and that friggin' sucks. Here's some more examples. Here's a phrase. Have you ever gone and heard someone goes, oh, that person's lost their marbles, or they're not playing with a full deck, or that person is crazy? Although I understand what you're trying to say, that is also a very stigmatizing comment. A comment about wrong assumptions about people with mental illness. People may assume someone with depression or another mental illness is unstable, lazy, untrustworthy, unintelligent, or incapable, right? And sometimes someone is going through things, and let's say they picked up a project and they've had a bout with mental illness, and it's not us to deem what they're capable of. Maybe if we notice a friend is suffering, maybe we ask them, is this something that you're able to continue doing? Let the decision be up to them, because you picked them in the first place for a reason, because they're good at the job. So, let that, if someone's struggling, sometimes we do have to move ahead, but let that be that person's choice. If they can still get it to you on the deadline by what you need, what's the problem? So, isolation of people with mental health. When talking to someone with depression or another mental health problem, you may unconsciously step back to increase your physical distance from someone or turn away from them. You may also speak to the person with mental illness in an angry or condescending tone, or as if he or she was a child. I understand that. I've seen it. It's wild. I don't know why people do it, but it happens. It's the stigma. Maybe someone who's acting like this has been in a situation where that's happened, or maybe that's how they've seen other people react, so they thought that was the better way. I'm not too sure. But don't do that. And also, telling someone with mental illness to get over it or snap out of it, that is stigma. Don't say that. Ask them what they need. Give them a hug. All right, so now into some facts of musician mental health. Can Music Make You Sick was the name of a study that came out in 2016 involving 2,211 participants by Help Musician UK. 71% of respondents believe that they have experienced anxiety and panic attacks. 68.5% of respondents experience incidents of depression. All right, I wonder why that is. We were talking earlier about the highs of the performance, the lows of the business. I'd be interested to see how many of these people were independent musicians. So another study out of Australia in 2016 with 2,900 participants said attempts for Australian entertainment workers are more than double of the general public. The levels of moderate to severe anxiety are 10 times higher than the general public. So this isn't just for musicians. This is also for the workers behind the scene. Australian entertainment industry workers experience suicidal ideations 5 to 7 times more than the general population, and 2 to 3 times more over the time of a lifetime. Road crew members experience suicidal ideation almost 9 times more than the general public. That's a high ass number. And then rates of suicidal ideation, planning, and attempts are extraordinarily high and indicate a need for early intervention program tailored to the industry. Well, we are going to play a quick game, Martin, with you called This or That. Is it music or a stimulant drug? Stress reliever, boosts energy levels. You can feel the effects on your body and brain. Triggers both positive and negative emotions. Combats loneliness at a chemical level. What do you think, Martin?
Is it music, Ace?
Sorry, buddy. Quick trick question. It's both.
Oh.
So, group question here. Maybe we could give people a moment to answer below. But what are some things that musicians are willing to do to create music? Martin, you're already talking. When we were chatting earlier, you're already mentioning, putting yourselves in these situations because you're trying to save budget. So you're willing to eat unhealthy. What are some of the most craziest things you've ever done?
This isn't like, oh my goodness, that's crazy. But I was presenting, I'm starting to tell a story about the tour we did in 2019, where we went from Texas up through Oklahoma, and we had to decide if we were going to make a left and go to Denver and try and do the Denver show in a snowstorm, the highest snow they've had in 25 years, or we were going to forget Denver and make a right and go to the Kansas City show 2 days later. And for some reason, we made a left. We went to Denver. It was one of the best shows of the tour. But when I was telling the story of it, the fact that we might not have gotten there, or we could have been trapped in Denver and had to cancel the last 3 dates. I mean, in retrospect, just going on tour in the first place seems completely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm prepared to do almost anything to.
How about in the early days? Like what? Someone in the chat here says, sacrifice friendship, go hungry, spend money on things for music, but not basic needs.
Right, all of that. But so now we have this problem, maybe, of like, here are the 5 things you need to do for your overall health and well-being. And anything, I would assume being a trapeze artist, requires that you make these sacrifices to get to that point. Right, so that feels like this strange juxtaposition to me,
Hey, Daryl, if you're still there, what are some of the craziest things you've done to put on your festival? I've been there with you, buddy. There's been some wild stuff. So, like, for me, I slept in the back of trailers because the rain was in the States. It was a van and trailer tour. The rain had gotten so bad, we had to stop under an underpass because the next exit was like, 20 miles, and the downpour was crazy. So we tried to get some sleep. I went into the trailer, which I couldn't lock fully from the inside. And every time a transport truck went by, I thought I was going to get smashed.
Wow.
Right? My first couple bands, we slept in the van, slept in people's front yards. I've given up my apartment for tour because it was either I go on tour and not afford rent, or I stay home and don't go on tour. Well, I pick tour, which means I come home and I live in my van and people's couches.
Carol said you broke your foot as well?
Yeah, we smashed my big toe. We were loading out a sub speaker, and the thing landed right on it. It was about 2:30 in the morning in the rain. We were loading out for Indie Week, and we're just there saying, okay, everyone was running on fumes because we're all working since 9 o'clock in the morning, and it slipped and it crushed my foot.
And Daryl said, and that was the day lightning hit the bank. I couldn't get floats for the door. The venue's loading elevator broke. The space was on the 6th floor. The gear pickup was in another city. And in the van got into an accident on the way for us to pick it up. But what I would say to that is not like, oh my goodness. I'd be like, yeah, sounds like a Tuesday. I'm like,
yeah.
But that's, although being in bands and being in this industry can be dangerous to us all in every possible meaning of that word, is it also beneficial to people, do you think, Ace?
That's I find that to be sort of a trick question, because on the one aspect, you're surrounded by music and that makes you feel great,
mm-hmm.
right? But in the music, I feel we're all addicted to it, or else we wouldn't be doing all that. Right. But then on the other side, and that's very healthy. But on the other side, we have the industry aspects, and when people are working on festivals and events that are very low budget, like, for some of these instances that Daryl was mentioning here, is that, would have been helpful to have a second crew? Yes. What's the budget? Is it available? Do you have enough? Are you able to afford the right people to have two people on doing one job? Maybe an afternoon shift and then a late night shift. No, you get a day rate and you work until the job's done.
Right. And that Tanya said she slept in a tent in the middle of Douglas Park in Chicago for 10 days for Riot Fest amongst cat-sized rats.
Wow, I believe that. And for 4 years, in fact. And part of it comes with like the pride of like, hey, look, I'm like, I made it through this war. It feels like a war. I was talking to a doctor who worked with the U.S. Army and who and got involved in the music industry. Was that he goes, the only difference between war and tour is that you get shot at less.
Well, in war you get shot at less.
No, in the music industry you get shot at less.
I don't know about that. Okay.
But
yeah.
I'm not, and I'm like, oh, and he explained it to me. It's like, it's a very similar lifestyle. You're gypsy. You don't got a place to call your own. You don't have personal space. You're always on a schedule. And it's just it's a bonkers lifestyle. I remember one time I was doing my first bus tour and we had stopped in some small gas station and I just woken up and I didn't know where I was. So I went to the McDonald's that was right out there and I asked the girl, I'm like, hey, what city are we in? She stopped, asked me if I was okay because she was worried that it maybe like bumped my head and I was in a concussion. Because I'm like, oh no, I just got off the bus. I've been sleeping for the last 3 hours. No idea where I am. But just take that outside perspective. That's how do you not know where you are? Right? And it's little things like that have sort of, little instances over the years that have popped into my head and I've recognized. So the next flight, does music sound like an addictive behavior?
Yeah, it sounds like risky behavior.
I know people who have stole, like broken into houses to get money for a guitar amp because they need that amp for their next gig. Musicians, unfortunately, there's been instances where bandmates have stolen off of each other. It's the same behavior as someone in what we would assume is like, someone who uses heroin or coke or crack or some of those like really harder drugs. We do the same sort of activities. So what's the difference? It's the only difference is that music is an acceptable activity, similar to going to the gym. But you could, the gym could be addictive. What are you using music to not face decisions that we have to make in other parts of our life? Because we all know when we go on tour, we can avoid home life like the plague. Sorry, honey. Oh, that happened. Bad news. Sorry. Can we talk about it later? I'm about to do sound check. And you just never address those issues. We're just going to go down a quick 10 lists of to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression here. Talk about your feelings. We're just talking about that. The importance of that and normalizing that conversation to yourself and your peers is so important. That way we feel understood. Keep it active. Regular exercise, boost your self-esteem, your concentration, sleep, and you feel better. And if you're on the road, pick up a couple empty cases, lift them up. They're there. Eat well. We were talking about that earlier. The importance of eating. If you drink sensibly. We often drink alcohol to change our mood. Some people drink to deal with fears or loneliness, but those effects are only temporary. And at the end of the day, we have to face those again. So, and if it's a time-sensitive thing, usually that situation gets a little bit trickier. Keep in touch. Connection. This right here, what we're all doing is a sense of connection. We've come together because we're all interested into a topic. But it's, make sure when you're away, use all these same technologies to stay in touch with your family and friends. When you're on the road, we start living like a big balance difference. Like there's no balance. It's just sort of music. Where's your life? It's falling over. Ask for help. So asking for help is a very difficult thing to do. And none of us are superhuman. But if we don't talk about mental health or mental health in the first place, asking for help would be even harder, because that way, if we're in a crisis moment, you'll think no one understands me. But if we've been able to get that conversation going while we're well, we'll know that we'll have certain people in our corners. So we shouldn't wait until a crisis moment to start talking about it. Take a break. Sometimes you just need a Sunday in bed, watch a movie, and chill. That is good. I take every Sunday off at 7 o'clock, 6:37 every night. I turn my work brain off, because I start around 7 to 8 in the morning. And by that time, my brain is like mush. If I try and take a business call later on in the day, I'm no good. I won't remember what it is. So take a break. Do something you're good at. Hey, if you're good at playing solitaire, crocheting, knitting, doing art, do something you're good at, because that builds your self-confidence. You enjoy drawing, whatever you're good, cooking. Go. If you're a good walker, go for a walk. If you're good at laying on the ground, lay on the ground. Just know that you're doing something that you enjoy. Bring the pleasure and it'll bring up our confidence. Accept who you are, positive self-talk. That is the most important thing. But you can't accept who you are if you have nothing nice to say about yourself. And we got to get in the habit of talking positive about ourselves, so other people start, falling into place. People think of you how you present yourself. So if you're always going like, oh, this is the hardest day in the world, I'm not good at this, this sucks. There could be, and it's good not to be good at things. That means you're uncomfortable. But as you go through those uncomfortable processes, you grow. And when you grow, you progress. And progress equals happiness. And then after you've cared for yourself, care for others. Because nothing feels good, almost as good than caring for others. And that's why often we do that first before accepting ourselves. Because it feels so good. And if we care for others, people's first, that means we're giving ourselves permission to put ourselves last. That means if you put yourselves last, everyone you talk to, because of that self-talk, will put you last as well. You'll become the second thought. You'll become the option, right? The secondary option. Why? Because you do it first. You set the tone on how you are viewed. Sorry, I got caught up reading Mason's comment here. Mentioned that he goes, I think a lot of my issues with stress have to do with my difficulty of saying no to people. What advice do you have for people like me who don't like to turn people down? You know what, Mason, that is such a huge question. And the answer is not easy, because I myself am a people pleaser, and I want to say yes to everything. But you have to, depending on the ask, you have to put that in what importance is that in your day. Like, are we out of guitar strings and we need them right away? Or do you still have a pack of guitar strings or a box of guitar strings, and the guitar tech, let's say, doesn't need it for a couple more days, but he's trying to be proactive, right? And it's as simple as say, what, I feel, is this something that we could order tomorrow? Or maybe you can say, hey, if you send me a link from a tour supply to make my job easier, that'd be great. Maybe depending on the ask, really. But like you, I'm a people pleaser, and I hate saying no, especially to someone on my road family. But depending on what the ask is, and maybe you can give us an example of an ask, you just got to put it in, prioritize it in the things that you already have to do, really. Like, are we asking for a Snickers bar for no reason? Sorry, can that wait? Because I'm about to let the doors open right now, and I got to make sure all our security's in place. Or do you drop security meeting to go get a friggin' Snickers bar? So prioritize.
I think that's harder at the beginning of someone's journey as well, because you don't want to say no to something that could be the coolest thing you've been involved with, or the thing that you think is going to be crap turns out to be like, wow, I actually really like doing this. I didn't realize this was, so it's tough.
You're right. Asking about what a TM I put in a mental health first kit.
Oh, that's a great question too. Oh,
yeah.
I was reading off of the chat, Ace, but
okay.
You want to answer, Tony? That's a great question.
So that is a great question. And it's not so, for a mental health first aid kit, there are classes, online classes, and in person that that you could take mental health first aid. So it's a few $100. It's usually the course of 2 days, 8 hours a day, and that definitely helps you manage other people's because it's not so much a first aid kit as mental health first aid skills that you need to learn, because you have to learn how to take things in from different perspectives. If someone is having a manic attack, or they, you need to, if you're in a room and someone's having an episode, you need to learn how to clear the room of people, not clear the person from the room, clear the room. So if it's your backstage area, you ask everyone to sit tight, and the people who don't belong there, get them out. So mental health first aid is a good one. Another one is just sort of doing your daily research. There's a whole bunch of YouTube videos up there where you can pick up little tricks and tips along the way, from mental health, learning anything you can, mental health and trauma, because, and addiction and trauma. There's a guy named Gabor Mate out of Vancouver. He's massive on believing that addiction is caused by trauma. So get to know your theories, get out there. It's a never-ending learning aspect to it, but just get your ear to the ground. Just like you would picking up an album. Eventually, you pick up who's doing what in the mental health space. So yeah, but mental health first aid, definitely something great to look into.
I like the idea of the mental health first aid kit. And also, I would say, as the stakes get higher with people's careers, with people's health, just understanding this stuff would give you, just to talk blatantly about job, gives you an edge in the job market. You could say, well, I've tour managed these shows, and I have these certifications, and I can bring this awareness. And I would also say that something you could do as a tour manager is do your job really well as a tour manager. If there's lactose intolerance, if there's whatever requirements the artists have and crew within reason, fulfill those requirements, so you're not dealing with an issue on top of an issue on top of an issue. There's a question here from Josh Heinzman in the Q&A. What recommendations would you have for someone who has a known mental illness and is starting into the business?
My advice for someone with a known mental illness would be to keep advocating for yourself. Take the time you need to learn the skills, like how to tour manage, how to make sure people are doing well. But like we had mentioned earlier, you got to put yourself first, because if you're not healthy and if you're not at a 100%, then you can't give more than what you have to the people around you. Mm-hmm. So if you're running only on like 20% fumes, energy level, brain level, then you'll never be able to run the tour properly. You'll never be able to play your guitar parts or whatever your job on that tour is. You'll never be able to do anything to full capacity because you're putting yourself last.
Wow. Well, thank you. Oh my goodness. I think as we come to the end of this, I have to say, I think we're just beginning this journey, this subject, and it feels really great to start this journey through the music community, because people on stage have microphones, megaphones, if you like. There's a merch booth. The merch booth doesn't have to just sell shirts and buttons. It can pass out materials and influence from that angle as well. And we can wear shirts that say "fuck stigma." So I want to thank you, Ace. This has been really, really great. I want to thank you on behalf of everybody. There's been some great comments in the chat and some great questions too. As I say, I think this is just the beginning of this journey. I think that the top 10 list, just really helpful stuff that I'm going to start to incorporate into my tour management class. Tonya Ray Cohen, thank you so much for your comments, and Joshua. Thanks again, Ace. This has been really great and timely as fuck. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for having me. And add over the bridge on all your social medias. If there's anything you want us to share, we will. We're starting up a community partnership program where we align with other resources. Basically, we want to be the bridge between, because there's a lot of great public resources out there, right? But because people in the music industry are so never in one place, we never even learn what's going on in our own town. So we want Over the Bridge to be that central place where, as we connect with organizations across North America, we want our industry to know what resources are available. Not just music industry resources, the ones that our government puts on, your government puts on, because they're out there, but we just don't know them. So I want to, so if anybody has a local resource that you're aware of in your area, please send it our way. We want to promote it because we want people in your area, to know what's available in their area. So
great. Thanks a lot, Ace.
Thank you very much, Martin. I appreciate this.
For helping with this, everyone.
All right.
Good deal.
Take care.